of.
Yeah, that's the one, the iconic one that they thought reminded of John D.
This is great. And you have such a, you look like you're really teed off too. That's why I love it.
Yeah.
And that's you and
okay, that's my swearing in there with
National Deputy.
And then take that picture of one with the Schultz letter up there. If you can see
That's great. Yeah.
That's a cool letter, actually.
Yeah. All right. And then that's you and.
Yeah, that's actually.
With Thatcher.
Cargill Lake with the guy that's outside Kabul. There's Margaret.
That's you and Thatcher. And then you brought this flag. This is a flag?
It's one of the three. I'll describe.
And you gave that to Ronald Reagan in person?
There he is. You see him right there? You see him up there?
Yeah.
You can move the screen. It's okay. Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so... Okay, so there's three flags. This is one of three. This one was put up by the Marine Security Guard. If you turn the side of the case and look at it, see, the Marine Security Guard gave me the beginning of Soviet troop withdrawal in May of 1988.
Yeah.
The beginning. Okay. Then two flags were flown on the day we evacuated. One I gave to President Reagan.
Yeah.
And the other I gave to Jim Baker.
Wow.
Secretary of State. Okay. And here's the thing for your over.
Because what I see on Ukraine, it looks like CIA Director Bill Burns, a former ambassador in Moscow, is using the same playbook as they used in Afghanistan when the Soviets were there. And my question is, I mean, Antony Blinken, the current Secretary of State, seems to have ignored everything from history. You never close an embassy. That's what diplomats do. You stay in wartime unless you declare war.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I was what happened just to as the time went on.
Yeah.
When we arrived there in '87. As time went on, the Mujahideen when I arrived there, I was told that we stopped off on the way in. I stopped off in Pakistan. Okay, so I went up to Islamabad, Peshawar, and in Peshawar I met with all the different resistance leaders, facilitated by the Pakistanis, who were all for that. And I told them, I said, look, I'm going in there. I mean, bring you in there so much, but we're here to help you do the right thing, etc. I had tea with Gulbuddin Hikmatyar, Victoria Street, but these are guys supported by the Pakistanis.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Pakistanis decided what they would send in terms of arms and which of their 6 groups they would help, and how much. All right, so starting about the second year, as we're moving into '88 and so forth, the Mujahideen get more rockets. In the beginning, they did 107 millimeter rockets, and 122 millimeter. Now, these are unguided, but they had lots of them. And one of our jobs was to count them. How many they fired? We were in the target. So we could easily count them. Wherever they exploded, because Kabul was wide, 6 mile wide, a valley, you could count every explosion. I don't know what we're saying, but we never were bothered. And I tell you another thing, my own modus operandi, in addition to the conversations which I had already described, I would at least once a week walk around the city of Kabul on foot, alone, unarmed.
Unarmed?
Right. And the reason I did that was because I had the same reason I'm talking to you now. I make conversation with people, common people, Afghan communist soldiers, Russian soldiers. There's no mercy. They follow me, of course. I'm not heard of them. They're not, quite conspicuous. But during all these times I did this, which is almost weekly, no one ever bothered me, no one ever threatened me, no one ever coerced me. And I got impressions, I would go to this, we call Chicken Street Bazaar, I'd walk on the streets, and it was a great thing, So I would say that we were definitely protected. They could have stopped us, bombed us up, thrown us out. And in fact, towards the end there, at the very end, they identified people they said were intelligence officers. I don't confirming or denying that they were. But they said, here they are, they're identified. Obviously, they're following people doing that, and these people left. They went back to outside Afghanistan. No, I mean, no one died when we were there from hostile action.
Yeah.
And they could have. But they did. And so we're there. So I was asked periodically to your question of closing the embassies.
Yeah.
When does it become too unsafe to keep the embassy open?
Yeah.
Okay, so my point was, exactly as your point is, that you should always keep it open. I said, if we had, say, 10 consecutive weeks of more than 250 rockets,
Yeah.
the number
Yeah.
would make it too risky. My
Yeah.
calculation. You get that idea. But I never recommend closing the embassy. Okay. And finally, the reason it was closed, is because when Bush won the election, transition period,
Yeah.
Jim Baker became Secretary of State. He did not want Americans dead on his watch, so we were ordered to close it.
All right, good.
I volunteered to go to Kabul in the mid-'80s. The reason I did it is because I spoke Russian. I'd served in Havana, Cuba, so I understood the whole communist thing. So I volunteered. I knew it was a no family, and so I was going to spend 2 years there. Another reason was my former deputy chief of mission in Moscow, Adolph Spike Dubs, had been killed in Kabul a few years before. He'd been kidnapped from his car and killed in a firefight there. So I sort of wanted to, go back and do my little piece. So I went for 1 year, studied the language called Dari, which is one of the major languages there. It's a variant of Persian. And a guy from the CIA and myself from the State Department, we studied with one instructor for 10 months. I achieved some level of proficiency there and went off to Kabul for a 2-year assignment. In Kabul, you might ask, you say, why the Russians were there, 120,000 Russian troops, local client regime say, why did the U.S. and the other Western powers maintain an embassy? And the reason was twofold. One, to follow Russian military movements, because most of their troops were in and around Kabul and at certain bases in the country. So by being there, you could see when they go out, and you could also get in the midst of their convoys and take pictures of their military equipment, the airplanes, the helicopters. Yeah, that was one reason. The other reason, which is more important, was that the Russians had allies, members of the Warsaw Pact, and we conversed with them to see what their views of the situation were as it evolved. So I went there. When we arrived, we had 20 people there, and we, I think, did a pretty good job, not only finding out what was going on, we also had a network of, let's call them informants, network of people, Afghans, who were willing on a weekly basis to tell us what was going on in home provinces or through their extended family. So we were able then to put on the BBC and the Voice of America local news, recognizing that it would not always be reliable, sometimes exaggerated, but it would give a sense throughout the country, and people in the resistance, Mujahideen, could then understand not only what was going on around them particularly, but nationally, where the trends were going, what action was being taken. So that turned out to be very useful as well. Good question. Professor Brzezinski was my professor, by the way, to take extra credit.
Yeah.
In his class of 200 people, Dynamics of Soviet Politics, only 4 got the highest grade, A-. So that's good. I liked Professor Brzezinski in those days before he went to the government. He was, we can talk about him later. But anyway, went out there. The reason the Russians did not kick us out or any other Westerners is because they always thought that the West would accept the fait accompli of Soviet occupation control of Afghanistan. They'd come in there in 1979 when the sort of leftist regime was going back and forth. They thought that maybe they would sell out to the Americans. So it was one of the reasons they came in. They wanted that buffer strip to protect their Central Asian properties from being contaminated. So they wanted the Americans and Westerners to recognize them. While I was there, we had some delegations visit from the Council on Foreign Relations, for example, in New York. I'm not going to mention the guy who headed it. He was a former Foreign Service colleague. But he said, look, this looks to me like it's solved. The Russians have it. We recognize the reality and do it. But no, I shouldn't do that. But that was their game. They did not want us to leave. Whatever. And I take great credit for what we did. Maybe they didn't think it was that important, but I did. Okay. So we were there. We eventually, after the first year we were there too, it wasn't all that unsafe. The Europeans had wives there, but they evacuated them after the first year. But we were able to accomplish useful things. And one of the things that I was able to do, my Russian was good at the time. But 3+4, very good. So I could converse with not only the Russians, but all the Eastern European diplomats who also spoke Russian. And we would have parties, receptions, as they do in foreign service everywhere. And we'd go to things and we'd talk to them. And I would call on their embassy, and some would call on me. In the case of the Soviets, always at their embassy, except for one occasion, which we'll talk about. Yeah. But the other guys do that. What they do, by the way, that's exactly how you do it. It's like what you just said. What they do to go, because the guys in the vehicles are high, you can drive in between them. And so the things, the armor and so forth, of course, from the helicopters. The attack helicopters are right under them at the end of the airport. And you can do that. Now, sometimes, occasionally, they would stop our people, I remember the guys that would put a rifle in the mouth and stuff like that, but they did not hurt us, okay? And the reason was they didn't want us to leave. It wasn't political. I mean, their political views are the same. I mean, it wasn't a pure military, force-on-force thing. It was a political military thing. And they quickly recognized that the American and Saudi, etc., logistic support of the Mujahideen was the key. If you break that, and here's something which I state as a fact, which I didn't own. I think it's true. But you should really investigate it.
Yeah.
When I was there, I mean, I'm not going to say who was in the embassy, but I would say that if I'm talking about the field, meaning outside the embassy, not connected to the embassy, I had been under the impression that there must have been CIA people out there with them. I was told about 3 or 4 years ago there were none. That the Pakistanis were the exclusive liaison for them. It's the idea of being in the game. We'll come to that in a moment.
All right.
But so starting about midway there, we got 60 to 250 rockets incoming a week. Okay, and of course these have no guidance. So it's luck of the draw where you're standing. But it is a wide valley, I would say. And there's one anecdote I was just thinking about this morning. Actually, that at my residential, there was swimming pool, 2 Marines that were swimming. I was sitting outside, and then there's one rocket just by chance just flew over and landed about a block away and exploded. And these 2 Marines, 20 years old, said, "Oh, sir, we don't want to die. We don't want to die." And I said everyone there. I mean, all of them did, and that includes the Marine security guards. Marine security guards, as you know from your own experience, they're not there to protect us. People. They're there to protect the papers, Mar-a-Lago, all that. Why do we? That's a good question, by the way. But anyway, no, they're there to protect the thing. Another institutional consideration is interesting. Because the support for the Mujahideen was operated through the Pakistani Inter-Service Intelligence Directorate, the Pakistani Army, the main source of information on what was going on in Afghanistan with these people was the Pakistanis. And that means you, as a United States, or Saudi or whatever, supporting, are vulnerable to the way they want to present the information. Now, the head of the ISI, when I was there, at the end was the name Hamid Gul, who later became a rather extremist figure in Pakistani politics. But what we were a guarantee of, we knew what was going on in Kabul when we were there, right? And so I remember one cable from Embassy in Islamabad came towards the end and said that Kabul will be surrounded and inundated in a ring of fire. Like it's going to be infernal thing. Never happened, okay? There were 60, 250 rockets a week. When I first arrived there, beginning of my 2-year stay, they said the electric power in Kabul will be terminated completely. The 6 different directions that will happen, and it's going to be terminated. No, there wasn't. Okay, so that's why you need a guarantee of what really is going on. You have to be in it. You have to know the situation, situation awareness, which comes not only from electronics and overhead and so forth, but you have to be there. You got to be talking to people. You got to be on the street. You got to feel it yourself. And that's why we should keep the embassies always open if we can.
Because
Wilson, of course, he was probably very important in getting support, but as I understand it, you only sit 1 foot, Dan Rather, 1 foot in Afghanistan. We live there,
Yeah.
and of course inside Afghanistan, well inside. But I don't think, my read of this, I mean, I don't know James Baker well. I met him several times, all stuff. I gave him one of the flags we took down.
You know, with the photograph of you taking the American flag.
I'll show you one of them, my other officer. But maybe domestic politics drive it. You know, his thing, simply that, didn't want to have Americans killed on his watch. Okay, so what I did with that photo you just described, that appeared on the front page of Washington Post, New York Times, etc., etc. But when we evacuated and reached New Delhi, got a message that they don't like that photo. Why is that? They don't like it because it looks like John Gunther Dean walking out of Cambodia, defeating the Vietnam War. Okay, so it wasn't a defeat, it was a victory. You know, we did very nicely after that. But the sensitivity was to domestic politics, not for the situation in Afghanistan. The presumption was, and you look at George Shultz's memoirs, by the way. He mentions the cable we sent at the end. I said, look, they said the Russians are leaving, but that doesn't mean the Afghan regime's going to fall. And it would not have fallen had the Soviet Union not fallen. If the logistics pipeline kept going, it would not have fallen. It lasted another couple of years. So a little bit about this is kind of an interesting thing too. The Soviets, you know, when I first arrived there, Russian ambassador was some career guy and of no consequence. He left, and they brought in a guy named Nikolai Yegorychev, who had been a prominent guy. He'd been an alternate member of the Politburo, hardline guy. He had been head of the Moscow City Committee of the Communist Party. I mean, this is a big deal. This is not a diplomat. This is a player. And they had also assigned the responsibility to the guy in the commander of 40th Army there, a guy named Boris Gromov. This guy, General Vorenikov, was Deputy Minister of Defense, came down to it. Okay, so what they had there is they brought in a hardline guy, you know, from hardline, guy who would oppose Khrushchev, sort of, you know, Yegorychev, as a political side, the military, you had these hardline military guys. Okay, so Yegorychev, his thing being a communist party, but I think it's over, you know, English diplomacy, but you knew Russian and you know me, because I'm the only guy in the West that speaks Russian, right? So every time we would go to reception at the Pakistani embassy, we would grab some vodka, sit down together and talk. And so I had lots of conversations with this guy, Yegorychev, because he was a lonely man, I'm a lonely man, and we talked. Okay, so one time we're talking there, and he said to me, he said, you know, this logistics thing, the support you guys are giving, the stinger and stuff, so we can't accept this. He said, I'm going to tell you something. He says, some patriot, you know, not to admit something, a patriot, a loyal citizen of Pakistan is going to shoot down one of your supply planes, you know. I said, well, that would be a bad thing. You know, I said, you know, this thing is over as far as I'm concerned, you know. It's clear you guys should get out, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I reported, you know. No this, you know, very good. Okay, so a few weeks goes on, a couple months there, and then the plane of President Zia ul-Haq with Olney Raphel on board blows up. Okay, no one ever, the speculation, of course, was that someone on the outside blew it up, or maybe an accident, but no one really definitively knows. Okay, on one occasion during my entire 2 years in Kabul, did this Yegorychev come to our embassy. That was the day after that. Okay, when that plane blew up, I want to tell you, you should see this guy called green and red tracer bullets going across the sky. Celebration time, man. Bang, bang, bang. Zia was, you know, he was truly an arch enemy, and you know, Raphel was on board. The U.S. Defense Attaché was on board, some general. Blew up. Okay, so Yegorychev comes to see me, and I said, well, you know, this is a very bad moment, obviously. He said, look, so I just want to tell you, he said, that we, the Russians, had nothing to do with this. I said, I did not expect you to say you did, but you have to say that strong field of suspicion is going to lay there, you know. There are people in the press that accuse him, but he comes to embassy the only time, one time, no other time. Okay, every time I call on him at the embassy or I see him in reception, but he never ever came to American embassy except for the day after that. Okay, and so I said, well, how about your allies here, Nachabula and all these guys? So I cannot speak to that. So to me, that's an implicit admission that they are aware of it and that they're, trying to hand off the blame. They couldn't have, Najibullah and the boys could not have done it alone without the Soviets involved. But the game that they're playing, the thing they're doing, is trying to say, you did and not us. Okay. Right. So Arnie Raphel was killed. Okay. He is a friend of mine. He facilitated my being there in Kabul. Nice guy. Liked him. A lot of stuff. Okay. So he this happens and things are very bad, etc., etc. Okay. So time passes, and we're getting now towards the time where there are meetings in Moscow. These are publicized. They decided they're really going to pull out. A lot of the upfront, the diplomacy said, "Oh no, we won't do it. We got to make a deal. Honorable exit, and save face." Also, like Putin in Ukraine, save face. A bunch of bullshit. Okay, we know because of our work that they really were going to pull out. We knew this. Okay, so the bullshit was up. They sent in a guy, Yuli Vorontsov, who was the deputy to Blinken for many years here in Washington, very famous diplomat. Yuli Vorontsov, and so I talked to him. He gave me the bullshit about they're not going to do it, and then you're going to do it. Well, anyway, just to jump ahead several years, when I come back from Northwood Grove, Vorontsov is named ambassador to the USA. So I call on him, and I said, okay, hey, look. I said, yeah, you remember our times in Kabul? Yeah, I do. I said, tell me the thing, about the last days of Kabul. It was going to be interesting. He said, well, he said, we really wanted a deal. And so Vorontsov was going to meet with Ahmed Shah Massoud, leader of the Panjshiri guys there, and we had a meeting set up out in the field there. We were going to do that. And you know what happened? Najibullah bombed the meeting before they arrived, presumably, because they're still around. So the Afghan client regime was afraid of a sell-off, which they should have been, since the Russians were pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, on the overt side, that's what's called semi-covert, the Russians brought in Tu-22 medium bombers. They bombed the area around the Salang Tunnel with, we think, fuel air explosives. And the reason we say that, not our American people went up there, but some Afghans who worked for us went up there, and they said, bodies lying over a place. So like they sucked the oxygen out of the air. And the idea was a warning: if you mess with the logistics, you can die.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a broad way, not specifically like everyone. And so they wanted the Salang land route open. And as I was just reading today in the paper about, if the Russians don't have land supply on the west side of the Dnipro, you can't have an offensive, right?
Yeah.
So they had to have that open. And then, the Russians, I think, said they had 13,000 people killed in 8 years in Afghanistan. But you don't really know, because no one was there to report on it. And what they would do, they're just a method of operation. So, was that besides their airstrikes and this and that and the other, they would have these camps around Kabul. Yeah. And then they would go out in these armored columns to diminish casualties because you're in metal. And what we would do is, you'd go out and see when they go and which direction they go. Tell everybody where they're coming. Probably give them a little advance warning of that, and get into convoys and all that kind of stuff. But that's, that was their method of operation. If I said Jim Baker evacuated the embassy because for domestic politics, they have domestic politics too. And this guy, the reason they let this Yegorychev go down there is because he represented a particular point of view. The foreign minister at the time for Gorbachev was Shevardnadze, who came down there. I subsequently dealt with Shevardnadze, who became president of Georgia. He's a great man. He's a wonderful, brilliant, smart, flexible guy. So he went down there, but let me just jump ahead again for one moment on Gromov and Podolskov and Yegorychev. Okay. Mentioned I went for Dan Quayle. Okay. When Dan Quayle had been invited to go to Moscow, the administration didn't want him to go for a variety of reasons, so Marilyn Quayle went, the wife, and she used to give a speech at the Moscow Law School. She's a lawyer, right? Okay, so I took advantage of that. I went along and I wanted to call on my friend Yegorychev, who I had dealt with in Afghanistan. And the Soviet Foreign Ministry, or Russian Foreign Ministry, whatever it was called at the time, said, it was actually the Soviet, because Marilyn Quayle, during that visit, met with Raisa Gorbachova, who broke down during the meeting. This is I never heard such thing in my life.
Yeah.
But she started crying in the meeting. The people didn't understand her husband. Okay. But anyway, I called on Yegorychev, and he, remember I told you his background, head of the Moscow City Committee, you all remember the
Yeah.
Bureau. He lives in a pensioner's apartment. I mean, he stretched arms across him.
Yeah.
They're talking, and he likes me, I tell him he's dead now, but I said, well, it's kind of interesting, you're there down there with Gromov and Berenikov, all these guys who are hard enough. He says, look, the people not accept what's happening now in Russia. Not going to accept. So this was the flagging of what became the August 1991 coup attempt, from which these guys are all involved in, which they wanted to win, but the things didn't quite play out as they thought. And I told Jack Matlock about it. So don't believe me. But that was the White House itself. Before I left, was with Quayle.
Yeah.
When Yeltsin came to visit, we know Yeltsin's drunk because it's on the other.
Yeah.
But Brent Scowcroft did not want Bush to meet with Yeltsin. They want to keep because them as Gorbachev, to keep Yeltsin at a distance. So I'm not aware of details of that part, but I'll tell you about Brzezinski. Let me give you a little background on Brzezinski, because I was a student.
Yeah.
He was on my doctoral committee. I took his class. I got a grade.
Yeah.
When Brzezinski's class, when I was in Soviet politics up at Columbia, they had 200 people in the class. It was a lecture class. It was big. What he did was, this is a time of dynamic things. I mean, he was like a star. They traded Samuel Huntington for Brzezinski. Brzezinski at Harvard, Huntington at Columbia. They traded him. Okay, so it's like Major League Football. So he lectured for an hour, and we also had a guy up there, Severin Bialer. I don't know if you ran to him, a ex-Polish communist Stalinist who flipped the law. But anyway, Brzezinski lectured an hour. Okay, so the second hour he would open it up to Q&A. Okay, these 200 students. Yeah, this is not MAGA. These were Trotskyites, man. They had the left of the left in there, right? This was it, and they wanted to destroy Brzezinski, tear him to pieces. Okay, and so they would throw these things at him. They come in. This guy was brilliant, very quick on his feet, ready, responsive. He was like, full of vigor. And then he would have occasionally some cocktails at his house, and they would serve the vodka in elk's horns or moose horns, so you can't put it down, and Mushka and the wife and all that stuff. So he was coming in there, he was a firecracker, he's hot. Okay, so they went down, and Carter, Vance was Carter's Secretary of State, you recall. Another patron of mine who helped me, actually, Marshall Shulman. Okay, Marshall Shulman came to Columbia late. I was with Alexander Dallin first, who went later to Stanford. But Marshall Shulman was a very nice man, as a gentleman. He and Colette were very nice. And they helped me go. I got a Council on Foreign Relations Fellowship for a year, which I took up at Harvard. Actually, I went to Harvard and I wrote this book, Arms for Europe. And so that's very nice and helpful. And for a few months, when Marshall Shulman went to the State Department to be the Soviet advisor to Vance, I helped Marshall Shulman, but I didn't volunteer to go to Havana. I wanted to go to Havana. I wanted to learn to do the road. So I went to Havana. But Marshall Shulman was very nice to me. I once called on him in Pamela Harriman's house, got a little taste of all that good stuff, and stuff. But Vance and Marshall Shulman wanted to have accommodation with the Russians. We went, Leskiel was with me, another big group, Bill Hyland, all this. We went to Moscow for the first arms control negotiation under Carter, okay? At that time, I was very big in arms control. I had served in ACTA, the Arms Control Disarmament Agency. It was big. It solved regional arms control, all that stuff. So we went there, and we stayed up in the guest house in Lennon Hills, and there was so much dispute because of what you just mentioned, the Brzezinski National Security Advisor, and then there's Vance here, and whether they're fighting for real things or for power, or mixed. Okay, so we're sitting there in Lennon Hills, and the position has arrived. The U.S. position has arrived. We're here. Where's our position? Okay, so what they did, they tore the position into pieces, like a piece of paper. This piece, Peter. And it was a total disaster because the strategic direction they took was that they wanted the Russians to go to deep reductions, which the Russians weren't going to buy. Gromyko was a foreign minister and do it, but that was the thing. And then Brzezinski, so he felt Carter was a dual personality. He'd been in the nuclear navy. And So he eventually, presumably for domestic political reasons, he gravitated to the Brzezinski thing. And when the Russians invaded Afghanistan, he gradually went along and then boosted. And fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, the Saudis were there to help us. And this is another thing, by the way, you should, strategically. In those days, for Afghanistan, for Contras in Nicaragua, Central America, for later Bosnia trade and equipment, the Saudis paid the bill. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a huge deal. Okay, and now that's not in the cards, I'm afraid. And this is the thing. I mean, it's I find sort of absent from everything we're doing. I mean, not so much focus on the internal politics of both our allies and our opponents. I mean, it's the first thing I would look to, not only in the clients, not the clients, but in the states which were involved in combat, like Ukraine, Afghanistan, etc. That's obvious. But Russia, in other words, why? When the guy says it was a safe base for Putin, or whoever says this, and the establishment, I mean, isn't that the kind of same thing the guys were trying to say to get out of Afghanistan? I mean, there's got to be a focus on some kind of internal manipulation. There's no reason why we shouldn't have an attitude towards different factions, developmental possibilities within Russia. And then I come back to the deal about the white diaspora. Yeah, there were a lot of fake things going on then, but there was always a counter-revolutionary, I don't know if you said manipulative, but an operational focus, even when the whites were in exile, and we have to have that now. It might end up being that way, not now.
You don't think it's not yet?
No, I mean, nothing's happening. But the point is not that what's happening. I really don't care what happens today or tomorrow or the next day. What I care what's happening, and I'm sure you care what's happening, is what is the direction in the next 5 years. This Lloyd Austin, to his credit, merely said, well, we hope that emerging out of this, the Russians are weaker and therefore pose less of a physical threat. No, that's not enough. That's good. That's a plus. But what we should see emerging out of this is an evolution of Russian governance. The promise of 91 has yet to be fulfilled, right? And that should be what we were going about all the time. The thing about Reagan and the evil empire was not, he was theologically right, but he was correct in the political sense of saying this is an illegitimate, unstable thing that is going to change. I can't say it's going to be tomorrow or the next day, if it's going to change. And you got to do that. For Western, it's not a question of aligning to fight a war. It's the idea of sharing the common prosperity, like you said, the EU. Okay, what is the Ukraine, what is Bulgaria, without being a larger economic entity where investment can occur, trade can occur? That's the future. And, as far as the rights of the citizens over there, most Russians would want this, but they're unable to because of these guys have formed this business combination which works for them, and it stopped working for them. I had the good fortune, I'm sure many people in the Berlin liaison group had to, of talking to many common Soviet Russian soldiers and officers. I talked to them on the street, talked to them all the time. Okay, I think you were very simple. You know yourself you lived in Moscow too, right? Yeah. Right, so you drive outside Moscow up towards the north to Zagorsk and all that stuff. You see people in some of these villages still carrying water and yokes, buckets and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of primitiveness now. And if you go to people who are enlisting for this re-enlistment now in the Ukraine, you got the Buryat Republic, these are primitive Mongolian people, I mean, they need the money and I don't blame them, okay. But the point is that there's so many instances I can report, like once some journalist colleagues were from Britain were held captive by some Russian troops up in a place called Karga Lake outside Kabul, so I stopped to try to help them. And sorry, the Russian soldiers, primitive, They fish with hand grenades. I mean, these guys are brain dead, And so, logical, they could suffer a lot. In Soviet times, the ordinary citizens suffered a lot. People who are local employees, who were co-opted by the KGB in our embassy, they had to stand on a long line. They suffered. It's horrible. Cold, hungry. So they're tough, but maybe not so bright and not have the luxury of being critical thinkers like we are.
In South America, especially Contras and Nicaragua. And what struck me is you're one of the only people, and correct me if I'm completely wrong, who gave a mea culpa for some of the stuff that happened in that period. And what I'm going back is our Ambassador McFaul, complete failure as one of the worst U.S. ambassadors to Russia ever. Nuland. These people have never apologized for mistakes they made in the past. I mean, why is that? I mean, if you messed up, don't you say, yes, I messed up?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a problem, I mean, I've heard of thing in American politics, so polarized, so much gotcha, so personal.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I would prefer to have our national dialogue on a little higher plane.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, not whether he sent the HIMARS on January 30th or February 2nd. No, that's an interesting, probably important, but it's more important that you kind of strategically, like Kissinger did an interview on Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago, 99 years old, and he brings up always the thing of purpose. What's your objective?
Yeah, but he never says about his mistakes.
He never mentions it. That's what the article, this Laura Seco wrote. So the guy hasn't been mistaken, never made a mistake in 99 years. He's Mr. Perfect, Mr. Clean. Okay. The ego of people in politics is huge. Huge. You know it. You've been around it.
Yeah.
They never admit mistakes because it costs them in some way. But hey, there should be a great debate now on what future we want for Russia and for China, and for, if we have the idea, how do we work towards it? The one model was tried, you get China to WTO, that's didn't quite trend, so we need another idea, another approach. For Putin and company, I mean, these guys, they're criminal guys. They have their very comfortable thing, but hey, we brought down the 5 families in New York, so how about the 5 families in Moscow?
Yeah.
I think that we got to deal at that kind of level. And then where's the action? I mean, when I described to you some action we took during Afghanistan through the Voice of America and the BBC to reach the common people in Afghanistan, a primitive country where people are illiterate, couldn't read, so we entered their ears. What are we going to do in Russia? I mean, how are we going to get our points of view over there? How do we get this political alternative there? Where are the conferences? I mean, it seems to me we're kind of, I don't know, morally disarmed. We're disarmed in a political kind of way, okay?